We're back again with Mr. Possum's Book of Practical Cats. Today we'll be looking at Skimbleshanks, the Railway Cat by T.S. Elliot. Skimbleshanks, the Railway Cat. There's a whisper down the line at 11:39 when the night mail's ready to depart, saying, "Skimble, where is Skimble? Has he gone to hunt the thimble? We must find him or the train can't start." All the guards and all the porters and the station master's daughters, they are searching high and low, saying, "Skimble, where is Skimble? For unless he's very nimble, then the night mail just can't go." At 11:42, then the signal's nearly due, and the passengers are frantic to a man. Then Skimble will appear, and he'll saunter to the rear. He's been busy in the luggage van. He gives one flash of his glass green eyes, and the signal goes all clear. And we're off at last for the northern part of the northern hemisphere. You may say that by and large it is Skimble who's in charge of the sleeping car express. From the driver and the guards to the bagman playing cards, he will supervise them all, more or less. Down the corridor he paces and examines all the faces of the travelers in the first and in the third. He establishes control by a regular patrol, and he'd know at once if anything occurred. He will watch you without winking, and he sees what you are thinking, and it's certain that he doesn't approve of hilarity and riot, so the folks are very quiet when Skimble is about and on the move. You can play no pranks on Skimbleshanks. He's a cat that cannot be ignored, so nothing goes wrong on the northern mail when Skimbleshanks is aboard. Oh, it's very pleasant when you have found your little den, with your name written up on the door. And the berth is very neat, with a newly folded sheet, and there's not a speck of dust upon the floor. There is every sort of light. You can make it dark or bright. There's a handle that you turn to make a breeze. There's a funny little basin you're supposed to wash your face in, and a crank to shut the window if you sneeze. Then the guard looks in politely and will ask you very brightly, "Do you like your morning tea, weak or strong?" But Skimble's just behind him and was ready to remind him, for Skimble won't let anything go wrong. And when you creep into your cozy berth and pull up the counterpane, you ought to reflect that it's very nice to know that you won't be bothered by mice. You can leave all that to the railway cat, the cat of the railway train. In the watches of the night, he is always fresh and bright. Every now and then he has a cup of tea, with perhaps a drop of scotch, while he's keeping on the watch, only stopping here and there to catch a flea. You were fast asleep at Crewe, and so you never knew that he was walking up and down the station. You were sleeping all the while he was busy at Carlisle, where he greets the station master with elation. But you saw him at Dumfries, where he speaks to the police if there's anything they ought to know about. When you get to Gallowgate, there you do not have to wait, for Skimbleshanks will help you to get out. He gives you a wave of his long brown tail, which says, "I'll see you again." You'll meet without fail on the midnight mail, the cat of the railway train. Today we're going to take a look at how this is a story. Even though it's a poem, it is set with a story in mind. And so we're going to be using our IEW story sequence chart. The first section of the chart says that we need to think about the characters and the setting. So first of all, let's look at who is in the story. The story includes several characters. There's Skimbleshanks, travelers, guards, porters, the station master's daughters, engineer, bagmen, the station master, police, and you. Did you notice that you were included in the poem? T.S. Eliot has drawn you into the story, but our main character here still continues to be Skimbleshanks, so we will primarily be looking at Skimbleshanks. The second question says, what are they like? In other words, our character and our setting, what are they like? Well, let's look at Skimble since he is our main character. Skimble is vital. He's very important to the running of the train. He's leisurely. We'll talk about that a little bit later. He's a supervisor. He's very observant of what is going on. He is vigilant. He doesn't miss a trick, and you can't play tricks on him. He's protective. He protects the passengers from mice while they are sleeping. And he's also alert. When does the story happen? This story happens overnight. We have some key words in our story that let us know when things are happening. At 11:39, the night mail, the train has been packed with its mail and it's ready to depart. At 11:42, it's almost time for it to leave. Later on in the poem, T.S. Eliot uses the words "in the watches of the night," indicating that while others are sleeping, someone is on duty watching. And the last question for characters and setting, where do they live or go? So in this particular story, they are traveling on the Sleeping Car Express. There are several other words that give us an idea of where we are. The northern part of the northern hemisphere, and several cities are named in the poem: Crewe, Carlisle, Dumfries, and Gallowgate. Let's move on to the plot and the conflict in the story. What is going on in the story that lets us know that there are some things that we need to answer about what is happening? What do they need or want? The passengers are seeking safety, security, comfort, and rest. Skimbleshanks is a big part of how they get this safety, security, comfort, and rest. What do they think? Well, let's look at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. So, all of our characters in the beginning of the story are concerned because Skimble is missing. In the middle of the story, since Skimble has shown up, Skimble is busy patrolling. And at the end of the story, Skimble helped out. And what do they say and do? Again, let's look at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. In the beginning, the words that give us an idea of how characters are feeling about what's going on is in the words that are given by the author. In the beginning, they are saying, "Skimble, where is Skimble?" in a frantic way. In the middle, when Skimble finally shows up, they're saying, "All clear," because now they can go on about what needs to be done on the train. And at the end of the story, Skimble is saying, "I'll see you again." giving you a final pause, a time to reflect, and to know that you'll be in good hands and that he's not going anywhere. Now let's talk about the climax resolution and the message of this particular story. First of all, how is the need for the passengers on the train resolved? It's primarily resolved because Skimble makes his appearance just in time. Skimble does as he's expected to do by the patrons on the train, and he completes his duties with valor. What happens after? At the end of the story, our travelers are happy with their trip. And what is the message or lesson given in this story? When we look at Skimbleshanks, what we see is that good character and diligence bring satisfaction of a job well done. And the final clincher comes in the very last line. You'll meet without fail on the midnight mail, the cat of the railway train. As we've done in the past with the other cats, I'd like to take a look at Skimbleshanks and some different illustrations that people have done for Skimbleshanks. So here I've given you 2 different examples, and you can see that the artist styles are very, very different. One of the things I do want to note on both of these, though, is the way in which they have taken human characteristics and applied them to an animal. And so when we look at the next page as well, I want you to compare and contrast the way in which Skimbleshanks is drawn by the artist versus the way that we saw Jenny Annie Dots drawn. So you have to think back to Jenny Annie Dots and see if there's some similarities and some differences between the 2 characters. Looking at these 3 pictures, again, I want you to be thinking about keeping your mind what we saw with Jenny Annie Dots. How is this the same? How are these characters different? What things can we see that make Skimbleshanks a special character? Can you name 3 similarities and 1 major difference between the 2 cats, Skimbleshanks and Jenny Annie Dots? There's one word in the poem that I think we need to talk just a little bit about. It's the word to saunter. We don't use the word saunter very often. It's an unusual word. It's not common for us. So it's important for us to take a look at what does T.S. Eliot mean by the word saunter. Here is a definition for saunter. To saunter means to walk in a slow, relaxed manner, without hurry or effort. Take a look at these 2 pictures. Do you think that the artists have done a good job? Do you think Skimbleshanks looks like he is sauntering in these 2 pictures? Does he look like he's walking in a slow, relaxed manner without hurry or effort? I hope you take some time to do your own illustration of Skimbleshanks and the railway train. Include the train if you would like, but make sure that you give me some details on what Skimbleshanks looks like. Think about the character Skimbleshanks. Think about how he walks, how he acts, and what he does. I've included here the poem so that if you would like to go back and find more details about the story, the setting, the characters, anything that we've talked about so far, you can read through the poem yourself. And finally, when you're done with all of that, I encourage you to check out Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat by T.S. Eliot in the Broadway production of Cats.